Welcome students. I hope you are doing well. Here in this video I am going to explain you about lesson 2 Directive Principles of State Policy of Civics. This is the part 1. So let's begin. The contents of this part 2 includes introduction, welfare state and fundamental rights. Introduction. Let me brief you about the introduction. At the time of independence, India suffered from poverty, illiteracy, social and economic inequalities, and poor standard of living. Many social and economic evils prevailed such as caste discrimination, child marriage, child labor, ill treatment of women, dowry system and exploitation of the poor and the weaker sections by the rich and powerful. Many other problems had also existed but had become acute under British rule. However, the British colonial government was unmindful of these problems and promoted only its own interests. Indian leaders strove to tackle these problems and they kept them in mind while defining the goals of the new Indian state. What is welfare state? Actually, the framers of Indian Constitution decided to establish a welfare state in India. A welfare state is based on a democratic system in which the government is responsible for social and economic well-being of all of its citizens. A welfare state ensures that every citizen, irrespective of class, caste, or wealth, is provided with equal opportunity to grow and develop his or her potential without any hindrance. In second point, it talks about the weaker and more vulnerable sections are protected against any form of social and economic exploitation. Third point talks about the gap between the privileged and the underprivileged, between the rich and the poor, and between the upper and the lower caste is progressively reduced. The fourth point is the state works for the growth and development of the entire society. Now, to realize these goals, the framers of the Indian Constitution incorporated the fundamental rights and the directive principles of state policy. In a democratic country, certain rights are considered essential for a citizen's well-being. These are called fundamental rights. Fundamental rights are a group of rights that have been recognized by a high degree of protection from encroachment. These rights are specifically identified in a constitution or have been found under due process of law. They give freedom to the individual and check the misuse of the power by the government. Fundamental rights cannot be taken away or changed very easily. There are certain fundamental rights to Indian citizens. Following are the fundamental rights which is given in the Constitution of India. First, right to equality. Second, right to freedom. Third, right against exploitation. Fourth, right to freedom of religion. Fifth, cultural and educational rights. Sixth, right to constitutional remedies. And the last one, right to education. Dear students, let's begin the explanation of these rights. So firstly, we'll begin with right to equality. The right to equality includes equality before the law, the prohibition of discrimination on grounds of religion, race, caste, sexual orientation, gender, or gender identity or place of birth, equality of opportunity in matters of employment, the abolition of untouchability and abolition of titles. Basically, the untouchability has been declared illegal. The right to equality also ensures equal justice for all Indian citizens. This means that the law is the same for everyone. Everybody who breaks the law is punished in the same way. Everybody has the right to get equal treatment in similar circumstances. The right to equality also enables every citizen to live with dignity and thus ensures social justice. The second fundamental right is right to freedom. The right to freedom includes freedom of speech and expression, assembly, association or union or cooperatives, movement, residence, and right to practice any profession or occupation. The right to freedom gives personal liberty to the citizens. Indian citizens have the right to express themselves freely without any fear. They can hold peaceful gatherings and can form associations. They can move around freely and live anywhere within the country. They can also choose their own professions. The right to freedom also protects a citizen from injustice. No citizen can be jailed for a crime unless proved guilty in a court of law. The right to freedom is not absolute. It has to be exercised without harming others. For instance, we cannot use our freedom of speech to say things that might arouse feelings of hatred among different sections of the society. On certain occasions, the citizens' freedom has to be restricted. This happens, for example, when the nation is at war. The third fundamental right is right against exploitation. The right against exploitation prohibits all forms of forced labor, child labor, and trafficking of human beings. Children under age of 14 are not allowed to work. As we can see that a large number of Indians are poor. They are often exploited by others. The need for money forces the poor, including children, to work for long hours at very low wages and in very unhygienic conditions. The right against exploitation is the right not to be forced to work. It aims to give social justice to citizens. Some forms of exploitation have been declared illegal. These include making people work without wages and making children aged below 14 work in mines, factories, and other dangerous places. However, to prevent being exploited, people must know their rights. The fourth fundamental right is right to freedom of religion. The right to freedom of religion includes freedom of conscience and free profession, practice and propagation of religion, freedom to manage religious affairs, freedom from certain taxes, and freedom from religious instructions in certain educational institutes. As India is a secular country, the Constitution gives every Indian the freedom to practice and preach the religion of his or her choice. Neither the government nor the law makes any discrimination on the basis of religion. The fifth fundamental right is the cultural and educational rights. It preserves the right of any section of citizens to conserve their culture, language, or script, and right of minorities to establish and administer educational institutions of their choice. The various cultural groups within India have the freedom to preserve and promote their languages, scripts, and customs. The Constitution gives every religious and cultural group the freedom to set up and maintain educational institutions. The government also sponsors cultural activities. When people learn to appreciate one another's cultures, there is better understanding among different cultural groups. The fifth fundamental right is right to constitutional remedies. The right to constitutional remedies is present for enforcement of fundamental rights. The courts have the power to issue orders to the government or any other organization to restore the fundamental rights of citizens. It enables a citizen to go to a court if his or her fundamental rights are being violated. The courts have the power to issue orders to the government to restore the fundamental rights of the citizens. The courts can also set aside any law that interferes with the citizens' fundamental rights. The last fundamental right is right to education. The children aged between 6 and 14 years have the right to get free education according to laws made by the government. So my dear students, here I am concluding the part 1 of chapter 2. Remaining parts of the chapter will be in part 2. Thank you.